Welcome to Extreme Reloading. In this episode, we're going to be talking about bullets and specifically seating bullets. Stick around. Now, in our last video, we talked about bullets. We looked at a bunch of different 168 grain 308 Winchester bullets and, specifically talked about the differences between those different bullets, all different makes and all different styles. In this video, we're going to be talking about seating bullets. And in essence, there are two different types of seating dies that we're going to be making use of, or that you can make use of. You have to choose from. And those two seating dies are specifically a standard, I'll call this a standard type die. This happens to be an RCBS, taper crimp die for the 9mm Luger. And the other type of die that I want to talk about is kind of going beyond the basics, beyond the bare essentials, into that little bit of a realm of extreme. And this type of die has these very nice adjustments. This happens to be a Reading competition seating die, bullet seating die. And you'll notice the big difference about this die compared to this bullet seating die, apart from the fact that this is for 308 Winchester, so it's a lot longer, and this is for the 9mm Luger pistol. Notice the top, okay? This is what's different about this one, and we're going to talk more about the advantages of this, maybe some disadvantages of it also, compared to a standard bullet seating die. Now, when you get to the point of seating a bullet, which is obviously after you have put in the powder charge, and you get to that point, then what you're going to want to do is, of course, making good notes in your reloading process that we've been talking about all season long. But go back to your recipe. This page I pulled out of my Sierra loading manual. And this one happens to be for the 308 Winchester 168 grain bullet. This is specifically, in fact, for the Sierra Match King bullet. And when I reload for 308 Winchester for my Ruger precision rifle, I'm using Reloader 15. Now, sometimes that is spelled all the way out, Reloader 15. Sometimes it is RL 15. And in this case, it's RE15. Sometimes they'll put a dash between the letters and the numbers. Sometimes they don't. So understand that that's what we're talking about here. That's what Sierra is talking about here. And what I really want to pay attention to is this stuff right near the top. And it says COAL. C-O-A-L, all in capital letters. That's because it's an acronym. Cartridge overall length, or sometimes considered combined overall length. What's combined? Well, it's the bullet and the case. Okay, so either way, this says that this specific recipe is 2.800 inches. Now, bear that in mind. That is how this is supposed to be set up or loaded, and it's going to be safe at those powder charges listed. It'll be safe in most rifles. That doesn't mean that you can start your powder charge at the maximum. Certainly don't want to do that. We talked all about that earlier. Lots of reasons why not. But starting at that 2.800 COAL, we need to make sure that we have set our bullet seating die so that the bullets or the completed cartridge will have that combined overall length. How do I know that? How do I test that? Well, here's where we're going to need, and we talked about this in the very beginning, this is where we're going to need a nice caliper. This happens to be a digital caliper, nothing terribly fancy about this one. This is from Harbor Freight. I've been using this for lots of years. and so you don't have to go out and kind of break the bank on a digital caliper. But what we're going to do, obviously, we're going to turn the thing on. We're going to zero it. This is not currently zeroed. I need to press that 0 button to calibrate it. And then I'm simply going to take that finished cartridge, place it inside the jaws, and measure it. And I need to get, when I'm first starting a load, I'll go with that combined overall length of 2.8 inches. So when you first turn the bullet seating die into your reloading press, the likelihood that when you put a bullet in this, right, and you seat that bullet, the likelihood that it is going to be 2.800 inches, almost nothing. I mean, it's almost nil. It's almost impossible that you're going to get that luck just by spinning it in there. So what we're going to do, here's my standard die for my 5.56 loads. I'm going to say, why is it red on top? And why is this one green on top? I have two different ones. Well, you know, I use lots of different bullets, or several different bullets now in my 5.56. I use the 62 grain Barnes TTSX tipped triple shock. This die is set for that. The green die is set for all my 69, and actually it also works for my 70 grain bullets. That's the two bullets that I use very commonly. I wouldn't have to have two dies if I was using a die, seating die like this one. I'll talk more about that in just a minute again. I also happen to have two dies, bullet seating dies, for my 9mm Luger. This one is for my 124 grain bullets, jacketed hollow point bullets, and the other, the Hornady bullet seating die, is what I use for my 115 grain bullets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread this into my press. Now that this die is threaded in place, what I would do for a first time setup is I would take this part right here and unthread it. I would unthread it quite a ways, almost to the point where we can remove it. Not quite there, just a thread or two in is just fine. And this contains and controls the bullet seating stem. Then I would take a case. Now this case would have a live primer in it and a powder charge, a correct powder charge. Place this onto the shell holder, and then we're just going to set this bullet in place here, and I'm going to raise the ram, raise it to its full position, and then I will turn this down just until I feel a little bit of resistance. That's the point where I know the seating stem is impacting or touching the bullet. Then I'm going to raise this up, and I'm going to turn this down, let's say about a quarter turn or so. Raise it again. Now that's just barely going to seat this thing, just barely going to seat that bullet. I'll then remove that bullet or that case, that cartridge, and I'll then make a measurement. And I can guarantee that at that point, with just that slight adjustment that we just made, just so the bullet doesn't fall out and the powder charge spills out, I can guarantee that that's going to be too long of a combined overall length. What we're going to do then is we're going to continue to turn this down, maybe quarter turn increments to begin with. Go ahead and seat the bullet again a little bit deeper. Remove it from the shell holder, measure it again, and you're going to continue this process. It may sound like it's a little bit tedious, yes, and actually it is, but that's the process that we use. And once we get this set for a given bullet, that's how we keep it. That's how we keep it. Unless, again, you're changing the bullet, changing your load, experimenting with different bullet seating depths, and so on. Now that's this one. This is a standard bullet seating die. The other one that I was alluding to is this Reading competition bullet seating die. Now this is for the .308 Winchester, and what I would need to do, I would need to change out this shell holder, because this shell holder is for the 5.56, but just for the discussion purposes I can leave this in place. I would repeat that same process, and I would, again, to start with, I would unscrew this, okay? Again, not all the way that you can remove this thing from the die body itself, but unscrew it, turn it out quite a ways, repeat the same type of process. And then what we want to really do is we want to make note of the index number where this particular bullet is essentially exactly where we want it. In my case, in my example, with a Sierra Match King 168 grain bullet, I'm looking for that 2.800 combined overall length. When I hit that, I'm going to make note of what the index value is on this dial right here. By the way, each one of these little increments is 1/1000th of an inch, and I've tested that. It really is about 1/1000th of an inch each time that we make that slight change. Now the real advantage of this is that I can use the same bullet seating die without any sort of worry for Sierra Match King bullets, Sierra tipped Match King bullets, Nosler AccuBond long-range bullets, Berger bullets, Spear bullets, whatever. As long as I make note of that index, I can just dial it right back. It's highly repeatable, and you're going to come right back to that exact combined overall length that you want for that given bullet. And even more importantly, cartridge base to ogive. Now, I should make a mention also about COL, combined overall length, and about the only time that you're going to deviate away from what the recipe calls for, even a little bit, or perhaps a little bit, is in relation to the magazine. We have so many magazine-fed rifles today. This is an HK magazine that I use for my IWI Tavor rifle. Excellent mags. I think these are probably the best that I've ever used in AR or in my Tavor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that that combined overall length will still fit in the magazine. So don't forget that. It's just terrible if you go all the way out to the range and you're all excited. I'm going to shoot this new load workup, round 1 and 2 and 3 and all this good stuff, and you push it in and it's like, uh-oh, the bullet tip is stuck. It won't, I can't put my second round in there. Well, that's not very good. So certainly make a measurement of your mag and make sure that the combined overall length that you're going to use will fit the mag. That could be a mag like this one right here for 5.56. It could be a AR-10 type of mag, SR-25 type of mag, whatever. Make sure it's going to fit. And then as you're going to be loading, however many rounds in your load workup, you want to make sure that they're all seated at the same combined overall length. Because combined overall length, variations in it, can also affect the pressure, not just the amount of powder that you put into the case. So make sure that once you have set this, then you load all of those rounds in the same way, same combined overall length. Now you might, load 10 rounds in your load workup or a dozen rounds in your load workup, and you then go back and you measure all of those, and you might notice you didn't make any changes there, but you still have a slight variation in that combined overall length. maybe a thousandth or so, plus or minus, around that coal. It's not that you did anything wrong. What it is that there are variations in the bullets themselves as they are constructed. Especially I've noticed in the polymer tip bullets. A lot of those will have just this slight 1,000th or so difference, and when you seat them in there, even though the same exact setting, nothing changed in that bullet seating die, that you'll sometimes have that. Don't sweat that again. Again, it's not going to be a tremendous problem as long as it's not tremendously different combined overall length. Now at this point, you've seated those bullets, 1 or 2 or 10 or whatever, however many bullets you're loading. You've seated all those things. Don't forget to make a note in your reloading journal that the coal on this particular load was this amount, right? On my 308 Winchester, this was my first load workup for Sierra Match King bullets. I would write down, set it to 2.800, and then I'd write that down. Make sure I make note of it about what I really did. And then as far as the bare essentials, bare necessities are concerned, those rounds are done. But now let's kick it up a little bit. Let's go a little bit extreme, or maybe fairly into the extreme here, about bullet seating. For precision, I pretty much look at coal only to make sure that it fits into the magazine that I'm using. And I'll make note of that, like I just said, but I'm also going to make another measurement. And that measurement is called CBTO, cartridge base to ogive. To do that, we need to invest a little bit more. And one of the tools that I've been using for some years is this bullet comparator kit. There's actually 2 pieces to this. I store it all in the same little box. Now this piece here is the basic part of this set. It'll come with that little kit that I just showed you. What we're going to do with this thing is we're going to take our digital caliper once again, and I'm going to set this unit in here, close it up just that little bit, screw that down, that little thumb screw right in there. And also you want to make sure that the bullet insert, that aluminum finished piece right there, is the right caliber for the round that you're actually loading. This happens to be a 30 caliber insert, and so it would be appropriate for those 308 Winchester bullets that I've been talking about. Okay, so once we have the correct insert, we have this piece mounted on one of the jaws. I need to close it up, and then I need to zero it. Right? I need to zero it to make adjustment for this piece right here. Then I'm going to open the jaws, and I'm going to place a cartridge head on the opposite side jaw, close up the caliper over the top, allowing this insert to fit over the top of that bullet, and then I'm going to make a measurement. Well, what is that measurement? That measurement is CBTO, cartridge base to ogive. So ogive is that part of the bullet where the diameter at that datum, at that point right there, is the size or diameter where that bullet is going to impact the rifling, or first impact the rifling. So that's an important little measurement right there. Make note of that CBTO in your reloading journal. You're going to have coal and you're going to have CBTO. Now, as I've been using this over the years, I noticed that this is good. CBTO is a far better way to improve the precision in my bullet seating and ultimately the precision of my groups downrange. But I also noticed that there's some potential error in measurements, because this thin little jaw over here allows for some wiggle room or some wobble, some variability in where that cartridge head or case head is placed. So what I did is I purchased another piece for the same kit, also made by Hornady, and this is designed to fit on the opposite jaw. And make sure that they line up as exact as you can possibly get it. Okay? Because now I know much more precisely where to place the head of that case or that cartridge, and this being quite a bit larger than what the jaws are and nice and flat, I can also make sure I don't wiggle or wobble that cartridge as I'm closing it up, and that the case body is nice and parallel with the jaws themselves. So we're going to make that measurement. And we're not done yet. The next thing that we might want to look at is how concentric are my bullets. So for that, we use this. You can use this. This is a Hornady comparator type of gauge. What we do is we will place the cartridge head here, and the bullet will be inserted on this side. Then what we're going to do, of course, is we're going to allow this tool to touch the tip of that bullet, or near the tip of that bullet. The farther you can get it, or the closer, relatively closer you can get it to the tip of the bullet, the better you're going to be at detecting what we call runout. And that is where the bullet is not concentric with the neck and body of the cartridge case. We want everything to be as precise and uniform and consistent as possible. If it's not, well, we can be introducing inconsistencies, and of course we could be affecting the precision of our load. Now, don't get too hung up on that tool right there, on the concentricity gauge, simply because we've done some tests here, and a bullet needs to be really run out poorly, or quite a lot of run out, before we're going to impact the accuracy, or I should say the precision of that load. So we're making measurements down to a couple thousandths of an inch. If you go much beyond 2/1000ths of an inch in runout variability, then that can impact the precision of your groups. You're going to have a little bit of runout that you're going to measure, but as long as you're keeping it to 1,000th, maybe even 15 thousandths, but you're still below 2/1000ths, we can't detect any difference in the load performance. Okay, so again, if you want to, certainly take a look at the concentricity of your load, especially if you are having problems with it. But I wouldn't say that that's mandatory even for crafting high precision ammunition. I would say something like this though: measuring the CBTO and making sure that the CBTO cartridge base to ogive is uniform for your load, especially once you start shooting for group. This is great. So that is the process of bullet seating. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually seat some of these Barnes TTSX bullets. This is a 5.56 case, and I'm using RCBS shell holder number 10. Pop that in there right there. And now I'm using a Hornady bullet seating die. These are fine bullet seating dies. I'm going to screw this into the RCBS Reloader Special 2 press. It's a single stage press. And you want to make sure you seat this and screw it in until it's tight, fully seated in here. If you don't do that, you're going to mess up the careful bullet seating workup that you did, and you will not have consistent bullet seating. I like to set my charged cases just to the left of the press, and the bullet, I like to set that just a little bit further to the left. So the setup looks like this. With my right hand, this case, and I'm trying to work around the camera so it's a little bit clumsy. The left hand grabs the bullet. I like to hold on to the rim like this, especially if you have a really full powder charge. Then I will just barely set that in there, raise that ram, lowering the handle, and you're going to feel it, a little bit of pressure, a little bit of tension. That is that. Well, thanks a bunch for watching, and tune in for the next episode of Extreme Reloading.